You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.
1935, the Lions win the NFL championship. The Detroit Tigers take the World Series. The Red Wings bring home Lord Stanley's Cup. Joe Louis begins his rise to world domination. This transforms the Motor City into Detroit, City of Champions. There we go, Detroit City of Champions, the podcast. I'm Jamie Flanagan.
Charles Avison.
And we are diving into a trilogy of books called Detroit
City of Champions.
City of Champions. Been talking a lot about the Tigers. And then just
pretty much most of the show has been the Tigers.
We launched things off, kind of gave a big overview, and then been doing a lot of Tiger talk. But today...
I'm excited, man. I love the 1934 and 35 Lions, man.
Shooting it right over the backboard.
Yeah.
No, that's a very obtuse Happy Days reference.
Oh, I thought you were going to say jump the shark. That's a Happy Day. I saw a thing about the jump the shark concept.
Yeah, no,
let's hope we don't ever jump the shark.
No, Joni had a crush on Potsy for a while.
Okay.
And he missed a free throw, and he was so good he shot it all the way over the backboard.
Oh, my God. Now you got to further give me more of that because I got to follow like this. So he was nervous for to date her or something, or he was like, if he hit the shot, that
she was a little girl, and she was just loving him from afar.
Okay,
and everybody was picking on him because he blew the shot. She was like blowing it up. It's like he was so good, he threw it over the backboard.
Oh, I got you. Okay,
but we're talking about a different Potsy this time around.
Yeah. Okay, now I get where you're going with that. The Potsy from. I got you. Okay, now I get you. It's
obtuse, man. Most of what I say just makes very little no sense.
Well, I'm the type that likes to process what somebody's saying to understand what somebody's trying to get at. So if I don't, you're going to have your obtuseness is going to have to be further explored. Just be warned of that.
So we got episode 11. It's Potsy. It's the Forgotten Genius of George Clark.
Yeah, like I say, I'm excited, man. Like, and there's no way. I like I was saying, I don't think we're going to be able to get through. There's no way we can get through all Potsy in this first episode.
Yeah.
So. We're going to take our time with him because Potsy Clark is an absolute legend in every sense of the word, and he is probably like there's so much forgotten stuff from this story, but really, like I say, Detroit sports in general. I mean, we owe such a debt of gratitude to Potsy Clark, and really the overall 1934 and 1935 Lions. Of all the teams, athletes. Components of this story that are overlooked. It's the 1934 and 1935 Detroit Lions. They're virtually unknown. I mean, like what vague small references there are to this team are just so obscure. I mean, like every once in a while. I mean, really the only person that ever gets mentioned from this team is a guy named Dutch Clark.
Okay.
Who is no relation to Potsy, who we're going to discuss today, but otherwise. Even in their day, the Lions were overlooked. The Lions were, like I say, it's almost like a tragedy because their story is so amazing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's just such an incredible story. And the players behind it, what they had to go through, all the stuff that led up to it is just, I mean, it's literally, you could just make a movie on the Lions. Which is why, like, putting them all together is just such a tremendous story. Like the Tigers, Lions, Red Wings, all of it.
Because the sports enthusiasm was building in Detroit because
the Tigers were on fire as we went through. The Tigers were the biggest thing out. The 34 and 35, they were the biggest thing.
Right. So it's not just a marketing ploy bringing this other team in here?
Well, I don't want to say, I don't think it was a marketing ploy. It was as much as it was an opportunity.
Okay.
Just the overview is that you have, a very talented football team in Portsmouth, Ohio. But the town Portsmouth it's kind of like Green Bay in the fact that originally in football you had these small towns that had these professional teams.
Yeah.
But Portsmouth was really hammered by the Great Depression. And so even the minuscule salaries that these players were making at this time was still not enough to support the players. But they had a great team. I mean, this is one of the three best teams you could say four teams because really the best teams of this era, Green Bay Packers, Chicago Bears, New York Giants, and the Portsmouth Spartans. These are the top four teams. And in fact, if I was the top three exclude the Giants. The Giants were good. And the Giants, they won, but But Portsmouth was one of the 3 elite teams that were always at the top, at the finals, in the very final couple games at the end of the season to decide who was the champion in that. But anyways, they had a very talented team.
Yeah.
And so at the end of 1933, the team is completely broke. They were paying their players with shares of stock in the team. In fact, their best player, Dutch Clark, had left the team because he had left at the end of 1932. He wasn't even there for their final season. That's how broke they were.
Oh.
They couldn't afford to pay him. So anyways, they, and so it was at the end of 1933, the team is disbanded. And that's where the opportunity comes along in 1934, where the Tigers are just exploding, as we've already gone through.
Right.
The city's going insane for the Tigers, and there's this opportunity to the NFL season opportunity, because Detroit had failed 3 times to establish an NFL team in much better economic circumstances, meaning the 1920s, the Roaring 20s.
Yeah.
And here's an opportunity now, if they can, there's this winning baseball team that captures the fascination of the city and of the state. And so here's an opportunity. What if we can bring an NFL team into this mix, a talented team, a good team, and in essence, associate this team with this wildly popular Tigers in some way, get some of the fans to, associate with them. And so, without going too far into it, because I really want to get into Potsy,
sure.
The idea is that their best player, Dutch Clark, was brought back. They paid him a bunch of money to bring him back. He was billed as the Ty Cobb of football. Is like their mark, there's a new Ty Cobb in Detroit, but he doesn't play baseball. You got to come watch, this team over here. And then, of course, they needed a team with a jungle theme to keep up with the Tigers,
sure.
as in the Lions. That's
okay.
the idea. So they were brought in at that moment to try to, to tap into that, newfound sports renaissance with the Tigers. Yeah. And the story really that's going to be told is, in what I've already kind of alluded to, is that rather than that happening, they found themselves in the situation where they were in complete shadow of the Tigers. Every single, it didn't matter what they did. They were always in the they were always at page 1 is the Tigers, page 3 or 4 is the Lions. They were always at the back end of it. And so they were.
We mentioned that last week. We were looking at a newspaper from 1934, and it was 2 days.
Only 2 days after their first game.
After the first game, and there was an injury report about someone from the other team, and that was the only little blurb mentioned at all. And it was their very first game in the city. Yeah. That's astounding.
And they won, too.
So tell me a little bit about football in America in at this time, in the 30s there. Is it how – because you would get a good team – and a popular team in baseball would get 1 million visitors. Yeah. Was football that big, and what was the state of it?
It's worth mentioning the evolution of pro football a little bit into this context, because initially in the early 1900s, college football was it. You played college football, and then after college, it was pretty much done. There was pro football. Jim Thorpe was the big headliner in the pro football world in the mid to late 1920s.
Yeah.
And I got a fantastic story about Jim Thorpe. It's this great analogy if we get a chance to throw into it.
Okay.
But remind me, I almost need to write it down. It's such a great story. But anyways, do you want to hear it real quick, just so I don't forget?
Yeah, it's a good spot.
This is a great spot for the
okay.
So anyways, it's just this iconic thing. It's like a little ditty. So the idea is that Newt Rockne, who's a very famous name, Notre Dame and all this.
Sure.
So Newt Rockne was done with college, and now he's playing for the Massillon Tigers. And this is I forgot what year, but it's in the 1920s. And so he's a pro playing for the Massillon Tigers. And so he's playing defensive end. And Jim Thorpe is a legendary player. I know you don't like to know too much about the sports element, but Jim Thorpe was literally one of the best.
I know the name.
He's one of the best.
He's gotta be big.
He's one of the best athletes in America ever produced.
Okay.
And he was a tremendous football player. He was a hard hitter, all this. So anyways, Newt Rockne is a rookie, and he's playing against Jim Thorpe is the running back. Newt Rockne is a defensive end. Okay. Play the snap of the ball. Newt Rockne comes around the corner and just hammers Jim Thorpe, drops him in the backfield. And Jim Thorpe looks up at Rockne and says, "Rock, you got to let old Jim run, Rock. What are you doing? You got to let old Jim run." And so then the next play happens, and then repeated almost the exact same scenario. Was Rockne comes around the corner. Jim Thorpe gets the ball, and Rockne hits him and tackles him, and he says again, "Rock, what are you doing? You got to let old Jim run, right?" And so the next play, the third play happens, and in this case, before Rockne can even take a couple of steps, he is absolutely nailed. Like the next thing he knows, he's looking down the field. Jim Thorpe just run down the field, scored a touchdown. Jim Thorpe ran him over, right? And on his way back down the field, Jim Thorpe looks at him and says, "There you go, Rock. Way to let old Jim run." Because he just ran him over and scored a touchdown. He's like, "That's how you do it, Rock. Let old Jim run."
That's supposed to work.
That was a little aside, but anyways, so football back in the the overall concept of football in their 20s and that is that football was an evolving game.
Yeah. And
college football was it. Such luminary teams like Michigan was a dominant force. Michigan was a superpower back then. But the evolution of pro football really stems, like a lot of other sports, which is that you have these stars in college that when they're done, they're such stars that they want to see them continue to play after the college game is over. And they want to see them compete against other former like superstars, so to speak. So really the big name that came out, the guy that gets a lot of the credit for, really like universal credit for really putting pro football on the map, was Red Grange.
Okay.
Because Red Grange was such a big name in college that when he signed pro, like there wasn't like a ton of money really in pro football early on. A lot of the players would work side jobs. They would get like a job as a teacher or whatever. And part of their contract would actually be from the team saying, "You sign with us and we got a managerial job at a factory for you, like earning so that was like a supplemental income, like guaranteed job was like part of the contract." And
so this is for football.
That was for pro football. Yeah.
Okay.
I think baseball had it a little bit better. I don't think it was to that point, but pro football was definitely, it was the type of thing. And even with the hockey too, was the same kind of thing where you would actually, part of your contract was that they would get you a good job after the season was over.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So really, and it was a chance for them to build a career, a secondary career, which is when their career was over.
Right.
They could continue on rising up the corporate ladder, so to speak. Yeah.
I just like the 70s and 80s. Yeah. It was like every pro athlete opened a car dealership.
Yeah, there you go.
It was like they all had a car dealership. Yeah. And then there was that big meltdown a handful of years ago, and they would just the big three and everybody were just shutting down dealerships, and so now they're all sportscasters.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank God for 24-hour news and cable networks. Now they can get gigs as sportscasters. Yeah. They can't open a car dealership anymore. All right, anyway.
So the idea is that Red Grange, when he came into pro football, would just like electrified it. Like it was just like it was a big deal because they're all like, "Oh my God," and Red Grange played for the Chicago Bears. And so it really put them on the map. They were already they were, one of the name brand teams, but it really brought a lot of cachet. It really brought a lot of that college football, which was already huge, brought that into pro football, like that. So that was like, I forgot what year that was. It was like I think it was the mid 1920s when Red Grange signed with the Bears. So anyway, the pro football began to, evolve in popularity. More stars joined the ranks in that. And then, one of the things that began to evolve, which really separated pro football, especially in these early eras, from anything really, was the increasing use of the forward pass.
Okay.
Because like if you're familiar with the games, the viewers are familiar with the games where you have rugby. Rugby is almost like a similar. Without the forward pass, football and rugby are eerily similar.
Okay.
And so the forward pass is what really began to distinguish football, American football from anything else. And so one of the things, there's if you look on YouTube, there's some great shows about the evolution of the football. That was like one of the biggest things to happen. Because originally the football, there's one great video you can search for it. It's actually got, I believe it's Boomer Esiason, who's a former NFL superstar. And Boomer goes through, he's like this former great quarterback, and he uses all the original balls to demonstrate, to see how easy they were to throw. And so some of these early 1920s balls, he's like, "Man, this thing is like throwing a rock. It's like throwing a watermelon. Like some of them are just so big." So anyways, and so the ball began to change to allow them to throw it easier. That was really the big thing. And so I forgot. I think it was right before 1934 is when the ball made one of its biggest shifts in reductions in size, and it would almost be recognizable today. And so the forward pass really started to take off in this, like really right in this specific era. This is the era when the forward pass really started to take off. But the way that they would do it was, like nowadays we have this like pocket passing where a quarterback drops back and the line, sort of drops back and forms a cup around him, like a bowl. Like that's what they call it, a pocket, to protect that quarterback, to give him max protection while he, max time to find the guy he wants to throw to and then to throw it. Back in this time, passing was a lot more along the lines of like misdirection. Like they would fake a team out and then pitch the ball to another guy who was like sitting there. And now he just throws like a quick, like a pre-designed route. Like there's a guy already run into the spot where the ball's going to go. So that was more along the lines of the way they did passing, back in this era. But it was, the running game was essential. You'd run the ball continuously back in this era. That was the idea. But one of the misconceptions that I really want to get out when talking about this, especially on this line of thought, is that it was like 2 yards in a cloud of dust. Like a lot of times you see these old black and white NFL games from, or old football games with leather helmets. Yeah. And the players are just battling, grinding back and forth. And there's like, you just see a guy, carry the ball for like a yard and get tackled, and you never see any action. And nothing could be further from the truth. The NFL back then, there was even though it was a heavy reliance on the ground game, you wouldn't see these massive, super high scoring games, but there was plenty of offense. There really was. The Lions are putting up points on people. The games were, it wasn't, that's what the misconception I want to get across is it wasn't, there had to be something to the game to continuously draw people to it and for this game to grow during this era. So, it wasn't as just because it wasn't the crazy aerial attacks that we have now, doesn't mean the game was necessarily like, some boring, slow contest or anything like this. So, one more thing to kind of get across as far as the football of this era, which is really important to know, is that nowadays a football roster has, actually wrote those down, nowadays a football roster has, 53 guys? What have I written down here? Yeah, 53. So you have 53 guys on a team. Okay. 53 guys. And there's only, at any given time, you've only got 11 guys on the field at any given time. Mm-hmm. So back then, your roster sizes are like 26 guys. All right. So, so you've got 26 guys and there's only 11 people on the field. So like,
they're playing both sides of the ball.
They're playing both sides of the ball.
I know that
literally.
Phrase.
Yeah, both sides. So in essence, it was called Iron Man football, and that's what they played a lot of it. A lot of iron. So they would play both sides because there's actually like limited substitutions. Like you couldn't just trade players out every other play like they do today. Mm-hmm. You literally had to play both sides of the ball, and so a quarterback wasn't just a guy who could throw the ball. He had to be equally proficient at running the ball. He had to be able to play defense. He'd be able to play safety. Like he had to cover whatever position you played on the field. You had to be able to cover your polar opposite on the other side. Mm-hmm. That's really what it boiled down to. So you'd be 1 second you'd be running the ball, and the next second you're trying to stop the guy coming at you. So that was really it's just such an interesting dynamic, and it's obviously doesn't exist like that today, but it's just such a cool thing. Like when we were kids growing up playing football, we would play Iron, that's all you do is play Iron Man. You're playing, when you're playing backyard football, whatever. And it's just such a cool game. Like I almost wish that it was like that today, because it's just such a cool thing. Like you got guys in the field just battling it out all day on offense and defense, and it's just all. Anyways, that's sort of like an overview. Yeah.
We got a couple people joining us. Kevin has started up a watch party.
Oh, great,
Kevin. And then
Kevin is
Bush.
Bush. What's up, Bush? We wished him happy birthday a couple weeks ago. Yeah,
right on. That was Jennifer. Jennifer's hanging out as well.
All right, hey Jenny, how you doing?
Raider, Jennifer Raider.
Yeah, Jenny. So So we're gonna try to if you're on here, if you comment on here, we're gonna try to give you a little mention or a shout out on here.
So thanks for starting up a watch party. Appreciate that.
Yeah, appreciate that.
And all right, so. Little foundation there on the football. So what do we need to know about? Do we need to know about the Spartans, or do we need to know about
Well, there's
Potsy?
so much to go into with all that. So I just want to start where we were talking with the Detroit Tigers, we were there's two real luminaries that we focused on a lot in our discussions with the Tigers, Frank Navin and Mickey Cochran.
Right.
Those are the two that like really got more airtime than anybody that
Sure.
we talked about in the Tiger section. And so in this case,
Yeah.
the one person that's going to get probably more airtime than anyone is Potsy Clark.
Okay.
Because there was we have the show introduction, the header on the show where it says, the forgotten genius of George Clark, which is his name, George Potsy Clark. But he was more than just like this football genius. I call him, his nickname at the time was the Little Colonel. But I call him the father of the Detroit Lions.
Okay.
I mean, he was that, as we've alluded to, just an absolutely essential person for the foundation of the Detroit Lions. And so I got a bullet point list of like some of the dates and stuff like this, so we don't have to do any.
So I have
retractions
I have some of those images you sent me
Yeah,
and that,
okay,
that
great,
video
great.
clip. So just call them up whenever you want them.
Okay. Let me see. I'm trying to think which ones we got.
So we got there's Potsy there on the cover.
Yeah.
of the,
So let me run through some of them.
football.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah. So we'll and I'll because I know which ones we got to bring up. So anyways, so just a rundown of some of the like I say the dates and facts. So born March 20th, 1894 in Carthage, Illinois. He was nicknamed Potsy at age 6 by a local veterinarian. I don't know exactly why, but that was the idea. So in high school, so this is just a list of his football accomplishments leading up into the story we're really going to get into today. So he went into high school in 1909. He led his football team to undefeated seasons as a sophomore and a junior, and then his final game of his senior season was his only loss, the final game of his senior season. So basically 3 undefeated seasons with the exception of 1 loss at the final game of his senior year. All right. So he's just led his team to basically 3 undefeated seasons in high school. And so he goes into a college called William and Vashti College. Okay.
Right.
In 1912, he's an all-state for this college. In 1913, he's the captain and he leads that team to an undefeated season in his second year in college. Okay, then he's noticed by a legendary college coach at this time named Bob Zupke, and he transfers to the University of Illinois, which at the time was a powerhouse in football, or maybe a growing powerhouse, I guess, with all this. But anyway, so he transfers to Illinois, and as soon as he gets to Illinois, he has 2 undefeated seasons at Illinois. So 2 undefeated seasons there too. It's like undefeated.
Oh
undefeated.
all right.
I mean, you're going to see this track record. And so so his first season, 1914, he leads the Illinois to a Western Conference championship, undefeated. In 1915, it's a second Western Conference championship, but it's a tie for it. So they tie for the Western in another undefeated season. So 2 years of undefeated season. And so he was called by Bob Zupke as one of the best backs he ever coached. Red Grange was in the same mention as Bob Zupke because Red Grange also played at University of Illinois. So Red Grange and basically Potsy Clark was like Red Grange before Red Grange. You see what I'm saying? He just didn't have the same name recognition. So anyway, he was so when he graduated from Illinois, he was so highly regarded in baseball that he was offered a contract by John McGraw for the New York Giants and Clark Griffith of the Washington Nationals. So 2 major league teams were offering him a major league contract when he came out of college.
Wow.
Just because he was so good at baseball too. So this guy's an athlete par excellence. So anyways, so he gets out of college and he coaches football at Kansas before enlisting in the Army to fight in World War I. So this is 1917 when he enlists in the Army. So he becomes the 2nd lieutenant of the 89th Field Artillery and saw combat in France in 1918. But this is what's really interesting about this. Okay, so in 1918, while they're over there, like many people are probably familiar with, like, if you've heard anything about World War I, there was all these like impromptu like baseball leagues, soccer leagues. The soldiers would play sports there.
Okay.
I mean? And so they have like tournaments and stuff like this, like the soldiers would. So this is something that probably nobody knows, okay? But it's like the coolest thing.
Yeah.
Is that there was an American Expeditionary Force football tournament championship.
Okay.
Okay. And so he played and coached for this 89th Division team to the AEF championship, which is the American Expeditionary Force championship. So he wins the championship over there, the championship with this, American Expeditionary Force championship, and it's his last game that he ever plays. And he, leads the state. Actually, I got a quote real quick for that. Let me grab that. Could you grab that?
Yeah, I'll grab those books.
Set for me. Because I want to read this. It's a great little quote that talks about him actually doing it. Thanks, man. I should have put this out earlier. So anyway, this is it's a great little ditty right here.
Yeah.
Short and to the point.
Look at us not pulling our books out, not doing our homework right.
Yeah. Focus on every single thing except for some of the most important
stuff. The information. Oh, dang it.
Yeah. So 346.
Yeah.
So this is a great little quote right here. So anyways, all right. So this is a quote that comes out. They're talking about it a little bit after the fact. This quote comes out of a 1937 Detroit Lions game program. Written by H.G. Selznier, who's one of the biggest Detroit legends as far as newspaper reporters. So anyways, so this is the quote right here. Robert C. Zupke says that Potsy Clark was the best football player he ever coached. Potsy's playing career, strangely enough, closed at the Velodrome near Paris on the last Saturday in March 1919. Arthur S. Hopush recently discovered a copy of The Watch on the Rhine, the official publication of the Marne Division of the Army of Occupation. The newspaper was published at Andernach, Germany, and the copy referred to contains a long account of the game that decided the football championship of the AEF, American Expeditionary Force. According to the headline, Potsy Clark of Illinois stars in hottest contest of entire gridiron season. Clark was a lieutenant and played with the 89th team. They met the 36th Division team in the final in Paris and won 14-6. According to the account, both teams played brilliant football, keeping the crowd of 15,000 on their toes practically every minute of the game. Lieutenant Potsy Clark, a former All-Western quarterback and punch of Zupke's 1915 Western Conference champions, easily outshone either team. At all times dangerous, he cut loose during the second half and wound up his AEF career by running through the entire 36th Division team, going 65 yards for a touchdown. So
wow.
So that's his last game is in the Army for the AEF, winning an AEF championship. I just think it's the coolest thing. And that's that first picture. If you want to throw that up there, I actually got the team photo of the AEF. There they are right there. There's Potsy in the top right corner.
Okay.
Yep. So
he's tall.
He's the shortest guy in the.
Oh, he's Owen on the right.
Yeah, with the white shirt on. Yeah.
Okay,
he's
fair
the
play.
Shortest. Yeah. But that's the
my
that's
other
the,
right.
That's that's the AEF team that won that AEF championship right there. The American Expeditionary Force, World War I. That's just the coolest photo. When I found that photo, I was just so happy. I was like, oh my God, that's the team that won that. And that if you notice in there too is that the article that he was talking about, that they found the story of that game was out of I think it was out of a German newspaper, because he said Andernach, Germany, that it was the Army of Occupation or whatever. It didn't sound like it was written by an American newspaper. It was some Army journal or something. So, it's just great that there's that story. But, so anyways, there's Potsy. He's coming out of the Army and he's like, championship, undefeated season, star. You know what I mean? He's this guy, what player have we talked about or that we will talk about? There's nobody that can match that kind of a track record of just dominance. Whatever team he played for won, I mean, he's just at this point in his career, he's already a legend. So anyways, so he gets out of the Army and, so he becomes, so this is what's kind of interesting is, he becomes a head coach at Michigan Agricultural College in 1920, which is now today it's Michigan State. I
was going to say MSU, yeah.
Yeah, so he coached a year at Michigan State. Back then it was called Michigan Agricultural College. So 1921 to 25, he takes various coaching positions at Kansas. 1921 to 25 is at Kansas. 1926 at Minnesota. 1927 to 29 is at Butler. In 1930, he quits coaching to run a successful insurance business, but love of the game brings him back. And so this is really where we start with Potsy. That's my little itemized list.
All right.
So this is going into 1931 now, okay? And so he becomes coach of the Portsmouth Spartans, as we've already kind of alluded to this idea that this is where he's going to land on. So we're good with that. So anyways, so he becomes coach of the Portsmouth Spartans. But before we even talk about what he did with the Spartans, it's incredibly important to mention the team that he was taking over. Okay. So he joins becomes a coach in 1931. But in order to understand the team, we got to understand 1930 with the year before he got there, what was the team when he took over.
Right.
So, Portsmouth, as we mentioned, Portsmouth was absolutely hammered during the Great Depression.
Yeah.
It's a small town. It doesn't have a lot of money really anyways, but it's also got hammered in the Depression. So in this era, there was no NFL draft. That's another thing that separates them from us. Is the draft is set up so that even it doesn't matter like how small a city is or how much money a team has.
Sure.
They all, like the worst team gets the top pick, the best player, best player available. So in this time, it was about money, right? I mean, that's really what it is. So the best talent was going to.
So it's then was why we have those rules now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in 1936, the first NFL draft, right after that, Lions, do it. So, but at this point, there was none. And so, it was really all about the skill of the coach to identify talent, and it was about the money that you had to pay these players, especially the money. New York, Chicago, some of these bigger cities had advantages.
And you said like those ancillary jobs they would have in those bigger towns, they're bigger, better jobs to.
You nailed it because in Portsmouth, if they're ravaged by the Great Depression and jobs are hard to come by already, like that's a tough thing to even get, to bring people in. So. So the economic situation of Portsmouth is a big deal, obviously. So the Spartans team had finished 8th of 11 teams in 1930. Okay. So they're also terrible on the field too, right? So he comes in. So the team is not in a tough spot. I mean, right? So Potsy comes in 1931 and he cuts 30 players. Oh. From the 1930 team.
Holy crap.
30. Okay. So that's like of all the things I read, like roster turnovers where a guy comes in and like overhauls a roster. I've never seen somebody cut 30 guys.
Yeah. And the rosters were a lot smaller back then.
Well, and they were smaller, as I'm saying. So what the first thing he did was he trimmed the roster in 1930 was 37. Oh, and so
the water boy, you're staying. Everybody else, get out.
So he trims 30 players from the 37-man roster, and he reduces the overall roster to 26. And then so he adds 19 new players to his thing. Okay, and so of the 19 new guys he adds, 3 would still be with him in 1934 when they became the Lions, and 6 would be with them when they won the 1935 championship. Oh, wow. So this is a major addition, what I mean? Like the fact that
configuration he's doing.
Yeah, like right from the beginning, he's already like found the guys that are eventually going to become, this champion in Detroit. And so this is where we kind of get into start to unravel or explore, dive into who he is. Yeah, is that the very first day of practice? Okay, probably the best player that he inherited from that 1930 team is a guy named Roy Father Lumpkin. Okay, so his name is Roy Lumpkin.
I love all the nicknames.
I know the greatest names there is.
I love the nicknames.
Yeah, so
Roy Father Lumpkin.
Yeah, Lumpkin. So anyways, so that's what you talk about, a great story for the screenplay. Like this Lumpkin is like one of the main characters I got in there. And so his story arc just in real life was amazing too. Like he was a fan favorite. He's one of the best players in the team. He's a big brutal fullback. It's like one of the best blockers in all of NFL. Huh? He's a great player. And so, and his nickname is the Rambling Wreck from Georgia Tech. That's Father Lumpkin. So, because there was a song called that. And they nicknamed him that. So anyways, he comes on there and Father Lumpkin is this like jovial player, like, captain of the team, like, does whatever kind of he wants to do. He's like the life and soul, he's just like he's a funny man, you know what I mean? But he's also one of the best players in the team. So his very first practice, he comes in, Potsy does, throws Father Lumpkin off the team for horse play. Like he wasn't being serious about the practice, joking around too much. Potsy cuts him.
Cut? The team?
Threw him off the field with the intention of like, you're done. Oh. Like he didn't actually register the transaction through the wire service or anything, but it was like, you're done, get off my field. Oh. And so first day in practice, setting the tone. Exactly. His best player, he throws off the field. And so anyways, like the idea being throwing him off the field, like, you're off the field and like, I'm going to decide between now and like sort of the end of the day whether I want this to be permanent. That's more along the lines of the situation. So I don't want to say cut him, but it was like, you know what, I'll figure out what I want to do with you later. You know, you might not be here tomorrow.
Hit the showers.
Exactly. So anyways, and so Lumpkin came to Potsy after that and apologized, like, I'm sorry, never happened again like this, whatever. And so Potsy brings him back, and Lumpkin is going to play a major part of all these stories. So that's how he sets the tone. Right from the beginning. And also right from the beginning, the 1931 Spartans, his very first year, they also set the tone, because the 1931, the Spartans come out and dominate. They come out with an 11-3 record in their very first, like, with this new team and all this. So they come right out in his very first year and are like an immediate powerhouse. To get to, to start this thing out. So anyways, do you have any questions? Because I can keep on.
No. The national championships in those, because I got a little image there, that's for Green Bay, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
That's literally the next point in the story I'm going to get to.
So, all right. So, 29, 30, 31, the national champs.
So you're looking at that Green Bay official program, yeah. So that ties exactly into this 1931. You're spot on with your timing with that, as usual.
There you go.
And this is unscripted too, so we're totally in sync.
I've been flashing that up and down.
I know, yeah, you have been, but now you
now
flash
I'm
up
on.
that one time that was the perfect time. That you nailed it. So anyways, so 1931 is like this key scenario, because the Spartans are headed down the wire. They're having this great team led by they'd already identified Dutch Clark as their as like this. He was Dutch, so they led by two rookie all pros. All pros means like you're like the best in the league. You're just like an all-star basically. And so they have led by their two all-pros, Dutch Clark and George, you're going to love this nickname, George Tarzan Christensen. All right? Tarzan. So George Tarzan Christensen and Dutch Clark. So his name is Earl Dutch Clark.
All right.
And so right off the bat, these are two rookies, and they leading this team. And Tarzan, as his name implies, like, because back then Tarzan was like the big movie coming out, right? Mm-hmm. And Tarzan, was it Johnny Weissmuller that played the original Tarzan? Was like, stacked, muscles and like this, and that's how Tarzan Christensen was. He's one of the biggest guys. One of the biggest guys there was. And we'll get some pictures of him when we talk about him more in depth. But he was just an absolute monster. I mean, he was just an absolute monster. And so anyway, so he led by these two stars. The Spartans are just dominant. They're just a great team. So anyways, as that graphic shows, and the graphic for people that can't see it, it's in a game program, that on the cover of it, it's a Green Bay Packers versus Portsmouth Spartans game program. And it shows on the cover, 3 flags that say national championships on them for the Green Bay Packers, 1929, 1930, and 1931. Mm-hmm. And so in essence, the Portsmouth Spartans are chasing the Green Bay Packers. At this point, they're the 2-time NFL championships, 2 years in a row. So the Packers were tough, man. They were really tough. And so 1931, again, the Packers are tough again. So the Packers the Spartans are chasing the Packers. And at the end of the year, the record for the Packers was 12-2. The record for the Portsmouth Spartans is 11-3. But they're the two best teams in the game. The Spartans had not yet faced the Packers. Oh. And so there was they were scheduled to face them in the final game.
All right.
But when in making the schedule for the season, it was more of like a phone call that said, when are we going to play you guys? And they're like, at the end of the year, we'll play you on this date. And they're like, okay. And so what ended up happening is the Packers back out of the game.
No, you can't do that.
You can't. That's right. They backed out of the game. And so, when the sportsmen are like, you got to give us a game. Like, what are you doing? And because if they would have beat them, they would have tied it up, and they maybe would have played another game to decide it or something.
Yeah.
And so the Packers back out, and they said, and when they took it to the league, to the commissioner, and the commissioner, they're like, where's the documentation that says you guys were scheduled to play? And they're like, what are you talking about?
What's the schedule for anybody?
What do you mean he's talking about like a contract.
Yeah.
He's like, where's the contract? And they're like,
he's in on it. He was in on it.
That's what I mean. They're like, what do you mean the contract? It was like we picked out a day and we were scheduled to play. And the guy goes, well, if you don't have a contract, I don't know what to tell you. And they're going, what do you mean a contract? What games, what do you mean a contract to play a football game? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's like, we haven't played them yet. This is a team that we're, it's in our league.
Yeah.
It's in the league. Why, it's time to play them. And so they back out, and then they claimed the championship off that in 1931.
Shenanigans.
That's what I mean. That was the fight. So that's what I mean. So the Portsmouth Spartans were rightly angered by the fact they're like, what a bunch of chickens. That's how you're going to win your championship is by, they're like, why should we play? Because the Packers were like, why should we play? We already have the championship.
So I knew there was a reason I didn't like Green Bay.
Yeah. So that's where the beginning of it starts. I'm going to give you a lot more reasons not to like Green Bay as we go on with this story. But that's, this is the beginning of that,
all right,
sort of rivalry with them. So anyways, yeah. So, this is really, again, these players are on this team. This is where their hatred of Green Bay starts. You see what I'm saying? They're like, come on. And so the guy who's running this team is a familiar name to a lot of people that may be football fans, Curly Lambeau. Lambeau Field is named after him. And so he's the coach. He's the coach at this time. And this is where the animosity with like Potsy Clark and him begins with Curly Lambeau. And so anyways, yeah, so that's how, the 31 Portsmouth Spartans got like totally jobbed out of this championship, man. So anyways, so that's this. So going into the next year, so going into this next year, now they're like, they want revenge. Like they're like, we're going to beat the Packers and knock them out or whatever. And so they get the revenge in spectacular fashion.
Oh, okay.
This is so cool. So this next year they at one point the Packers are actually having a great year. They're having this fantastic year, and the Spartans have tied I think like 2 or 3 times. I forgot to exactly written the record down, but so they tied like 2 or 3 times. But at the time, a tie didn't count for anything. It was like basically like the game never happened. So they had like 2 or 3 ties. But what ended up happening though is that there was another incident that led to Potsy getting even more angry with Curly Lambeau, and he tells Curly Lambeau, he says, next time we play you, we're going to play you with only 11 guys. We're going to beat you with only 11 guys. We're going to beat you with, he's like, see, I forgot, I don't even know. There's all these different mythologies surrounding this about what happened or whatever. About what happened is, that not only what led to that incident, but also his, like why he would say that. It must have been just something that, it must have been something. I don't know what exactly it was, but he said, he led him to say, the next time we play you, we're going to beat you with only 11 guys. And so the next time they did play him was, again, this is 1932. Yeah. They play him with only 11 guys, and they beat him with only 11 guys. Did the second
bus not show up or something?
Well, I don't know what it was, a status thing or whatever. Is there something that Potts, that's what I'm trying to say, is I don't know what would lead him for that specific, like saying, there's a lot of things you could say, we're going to beat you, we're going to beat the heck out of you, we're going to beat the tar out of you. But what would lead him to say, we're going to beat you with only 11 guys? Yeah. Like, I don't know what, what that would mean. Like, maybe it meant, maybe he was getting criticized for doing like a couple too many substitutions or something like this.
Okay.
But that's the only reason, like, there's got to be like a motivating factor for why he would say that. And then also why he would live up to that boast, because there's a great quote in here, that he actually talks about it, that they actually say, we were going into the locker, I think it was Dutch Clark, and he says, it was either Dutch Clark or Glenn Presnell that says this, but he says that prior to the game, Potsy tells them, you 11 men are going out there to beat the Packers today. And he goes, and the only way you're coming off the field is on a stretcher.
Oh my gosh.
The only way you're coming out, it's all just you 11. And he sends them out there and they beat them. Yeah, I think it was 9-0. I got to double check the score. It was like 9. I think it was like 9-0.
Everybody else have food poisoning or something?
Not like I say, it was no, he said it intentionally. He wanted to beat him there was some motivating factor that led him to say, we're going to beat you with only with these 11 guys.
And they did.
And so this team became known as the Iron Men.
Okay.
The Iron Men, because they won an NFL game with only 11
and against
guys.
One of the
premier
strongest
team in the league.
Exactly.
Right, so they're the Iron Men from here on out. These Iron Men, and these guys are the ones that are going to end up.
We're still in Ohio.
Yeah, so we're still in Portsmouth, but they would eventually go on to become, many of these guys would go on to become, Lions and all that. So this is the team that the Detroit's about, going to get in a few years.
Mm-hmm. So now Potsy, he's just the coach and the manager, right? Mm-hmm. So he's not playing anymore. Mm-mm. So that last game in
the AEF.
World War I,
that was it.
That was his last playing game.
That was his last game, yep.
Okay. And he's a small guy.
Yeah, yep.
He had that picture. We saw that picture a couple minutes ago, and he's like he's a smaller dude, but he sounds like it, just like
dominant.
Yeah.
He won.
Look at he's gangly there compared to those other guys.
Yeah, and he won everywhere he went. But in football, doesn't necessarily mean you have to be the biggest guy.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, but to boss around that and to get that message out there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, but I think a lot of times with these coaches that had these exceptional playing careers like that, just your mere sort of presence carries a little bit of weight because anybody that if you're a guy that's won, I mean, look at the list. We went through the list of all these championships and undefeated seasons. Like, literally, I mean, I think it's every single year it was an undefeated season for like every single team he played for. I mean, literally, I went down the year by year, and it was like every single like undefeated season, undefeated Western Championship. Oh, this one it was a tie for Western Championship though. You know what I mean? Like it's sensational. So I mean, a guy like that carries that kind of gravity when he walks in. Is like, I've won championships every year of my life. You know what I mean? And then his very first season with Portsmouth, they rock. You know what I mean? They come out 31. And this is a all of a sudden they love this guy. They bought in. Like the very first year, he overhauls, he cuts 20 guys. I mean, 30 guys. He cuts 30 guys, and then in his first year, they're the toughest team in the NFL. The Packers have to pull some dirty trick just to get out, just to slink out of away with an NFL championship. You know what I mean? Like that's what he's led. So this is a guy that this is. I mean, there's something to this guy. I mean, look at him. Yeah. So anyways. So 1932, so he beats the Packers. The Iron Man game, they beat the Packers. And so this sets up a situation, even though the Packers had won way more games. I forgot their record, but anybody can look it up on the line. But so it sets up a situation where despite the fact that they have a dramatically far fewer wins than the Packers, the numerous ties that they had put them in first place by a fraction, by the tiniest fraction of a percentage point. And so what happened is that the Chicago Bears also, they had the same record as the Lions. Okay. Oh. And what that did was it set up the first NFL championship game. So if you're looking at it right now and you're wondering why the records don't match, look at the winning percentages. And what happened in 1932 is it set the stage for the first NFL championship game.
Oh, okay.
Yes, because it was a tiebreaker.
Sure.
And so the NFL for the longest time had been wanting their own version of a World Series.
Yeah.
And so now they had it. They needed a tiebreaker game to decide who would win between the Spartans and the Bears. And so at this moment, the season there was a earlier than expected winter that was blowing through the United States, and so they couldn't play that championship game. They couldn't play that championship game outdoors, and so they played in Chicago, and they played at an indoor inside the Blackhawks ice arena. Oh, which as an ice arena is smaller than a football field. Yeah, and so they had a small field. They played with a miniature field. It was a smaller field. I think it was a 50-yard field, or maybe.
Is this a story of the birth of arena football? Is that?
It's the birth of the no. This is the birth of the NFL. This is the birth of the NFL. And so I mean, I forgot the length of the field. I think it was 50 or 60 yards. It was. And so what they would do is they would rotate the field or whatever like that. I think maybe it was 70 or 80 yards, and each team started at a certain spot. But there was all these different rules that went into this one particular game in order to have this game.
And so this is Portsmouth and the Bears.
And the Bears, yeah.
And they're at the top. They're at the top.
Yeah.
So where did the Green Bay?
Green Bay finished out of the race.
Wow. Okay.
That's why you don't see that flag. There's no 1932. Why? Because the Spartans knocked them off in 1932 with the Iron Man game.
So they're playing inside.
Yeah. So now it's the Bears. Versus the Spartans, and this is where the beginning of the Bears rivalry starts to germinate. And there's going to be many, many more. By the time we get to 1935, at the end of the season, 1935, my goal is to show just how red hot they hated the Packers too. But the Bears rivalry at this point was insane.
So we're going to have to pause. So either do we want to hear about this game, or do we want to kick it off with this game?
Let's kick it off. Yeah, next week. Yeah,
next week. Yeah. So we'll find out what happened.
Leave them hanging. That's what they always leave them wanting more. Isn't that the first reason of show business? Is leave them wanting.
All right. So we got our Lions to be. We got the Spartans there, and we got the Bears.
Yes,
facing off in 1932
at the first NFL
championship game.
So leave you hanging a lot more.
So this was taking place in Chicago.
Yep, in Chicago at the Blackhawks ice arena, indoors. Yeah, it was in a blizzard outside. That's why they had to play indoors. It wasn't just some random snowfall. They would have played through a snowfall. This was a blizzard.
Yeah.
Blizzard ripping through the Midwest. Yeah. So they had to go inside, play the first NFL championship game. So I'm sure there's gonna be like 1,000 people right now, all Googling to see what happened next. But guess what? You can wait till next week and you'll find out a way better version of the story.
We'll find out what happened between the Bears and the Spartans. Detroit City of Champions, the website, Charles.
You just said it. Just add a .com. DetroitCityOfChampions.com.
That's what I was looking for.
Fan of the show is the easiest website to remember because just add a .com.
That is.
Oh, you were waiting for me to just add the .com?
I was waiting for you to do that.
Mary
I
missed
checked
my cue.
in.
I missed my cue, man.
Mary Tomlinson said hi.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Mary, how you doing? Long time no see.
And Cindy Lee Lindow.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Cindy, how you doing?
She checked in. Robert Gray, John Howell, Derek, and Sherry Benielos.
Great. Thanks for all watching.
Yeah,
everybody
chimed in. So appreciate you for doing that, to giving us a listen, watching on the YouTube and the
share,
Facebook
comment,
Live.
help us spread it around a little
So
bit.
if you're watching on Facebook or if you're watching on YouTube, there is the audio version of the podcast available, and those episodes come out Monday mornings for your drive into work.
Yep, and the idea with the show is that we broadcast live on Facebook. If you haven't seen it now, we broadcast live on Facebook, and then we upload it to all these different sites, so you can watch it live, or you can watch it, listen to it on the podcast, or you can watch the actual broadcast on YouTube. So if you miss a show, the live show, you can see it on YouTube. Yeah. And the link for Jamie's got the greatest thing in the world, which is called a link tree, which you got to click this. You click the link, and it shows every single way to watch it. All you got to do is literally click on the one you want to watch.
It's the way that works best for you. So the link's down in the description, wherever you're watching. Again, we appreciate everybody hanging out with us, and we'll do more again.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to take 2 episodes just for Potsy. We had to cut them off, leave them hanging. That's the best way to do it.
Next week we're off to Chicago. It's Detroit City of Champions podcast.